Welcome to the CPSA webinar, How to Use Social Selling to Influence Your Pipeline. I'm your presenter, Andrew Jenkins. Similar to the sales kickoffs and conferences that I've spoken at, I'm going to spend a little bit of time with you today to walk you through LinkedIn and other social selling tools and methods to influence your pipeline. Some of you may have seen or heard this stat before, but it's worth reiteration. 57% of the journey is already complete before a B2B customer contacts a supplier. So ideally, you want to be nurturing them along that 60% approximately part of their journey and beyond. We're also seeing a situation where there's more people involved in the buying decision. Now, on average, 5.4 people. Specific to Canada, we're looking at 14 plus million people on LinkedIn. Almost half of the country is on LinkedIn. Part of the influence you might have on your pipeline is going to stem from the personal brand that you've established in social media, and the basis for that is predominantly on LinkedIn. And a good place to start to benchmark that personal brand is your SSI score, or Social Selling Index. The next time you're logged into LinkedIn on one tab, open a second tab and Google Social Selling Index, and then follow the links to get your score. You'll find there that the criteria for calculating your score is establish your personal brand, finding the right people, engaging with insights, and building relationships. Take a look at where you're at now and make note. And over maybe the next 60 or 90 days, track where you make improvements. Take a look at how you measured up against people in your industry and people in your network. One thing I want to remind you is that your SSI score is very similar to the gas in your car. Take your foot off the gas and the car slows down. If you become less active on LinkedIn, your SSI score will reflect it in in the metric. So if you go away for 2 weeks on vacation, you'll see a drop in your SSI score most likely. So pay attention to that and try to maintain as much consistent effort as possible. When it comes to your LinkedIn profile and someone visits that profile, what will they find? Will they find the scuba diver on the left, the gray ghost in the middle, or a professional headshot on the right? Bear in mind that a professional headshot means that you'll have an increased number of views to your profile. And when it comes to sending messages through the LinkedIn platform, you'll get a much higher open rate. It's all about conveying a personal brand and a trustworthy presence. The new profile. There's a lot of aspects of the new profile that you can take advantage of. Customize your LinkedIn profile URL. You can even incorporate some branding into that if you see fit. It's free. You can change it as many times as you want until you get what you like. You are given 3 links to make use of. Send them to a piece of marketing collateral, a content portfolio, corporate website, your blog, the corporate blog. You can use them as you see fit and change them accordingly. Include your contact information there to make it easy for people to reach you. Continue to add and augment your profile, but bear in mind that you want to humanize it as you do that. So as an example, when it comes to your headline, it's not just your job title. I want you to think about your personal value proposition. How do you convey value? How do you help? So you might be Alan Smithy, Director of Marketing. Well, you might be one of hundreds of directors of marketing. It's not very engaging, with no disrespect to directors of marketing. But if I'm doing research on LinkedIn, I'm looking for a director of marketing that might help me, well, I'm looking for ones that'll stand out. And so in this case, Alan, by adding to his headline and saying that he helps companies navigate the changing digital marketing landscape, stands out. He differentiates himself. Think of a headline versus a job title. Think about how you can help or the value you provide. Brand yourself. You've got 120 characters, so make them count. Here's a great example. Here, even accountants can be funny. Gareth Burton, accountant, optimist, techie, pro wrestler. 3 out of 4 are true. Who would you rather talk to? Just an accountant or someone, who takes themselves, maybe not too seriously. I mean, yes, if you're talking to an accountant, you want them to take their work seriously, but you want it to be a pleasant experience. So why not work with someone that at first impression looks like someone you would enjoy working with? If you have the chance to take a look at Gareth Burton's profile, take a look at his summary too. He's very, very inviting and very, very human. Don't bore people who visit your profile with jargon. I'm a highly driven business leader with a proven track record of design and execution of high priority initiatives. A combination of strong business acumen and dynamic leadership skills have attributed to a unique ability to influence positive change and to exceed objectives. Can you tell me what that means? It's riddled with jargon. It really doesn't mean anything and doesn't tell you anything about how they can help, what they've done in the past, and for whom. Now here's just an example. This isn't perfect. This isn't necessarily what you need to do, but it's an example of to inspire you. Tell them what you do and how you help. So here's a summary example. If I could prove to you that your competition is doing a better job of marketing than you, would you listen? If I could show you that people are talking about your company and your products and that they were not always positive, would you take action? I help companies discover where and how they are being talked about online, develop a plan of action to participate in those conversations, and influence their outcomes. No jargon, simple language. You get a sense of what the organization or the person does, for whom, how they help. Consider adding media, images, video, presentations. There's no shortage of what's made available to you in terms of what kind of media you can upload. Use it to differentiate yourself. Share updates on a regular basis because they tell your network what you're up to. They're an opportunity to share content of value. They provide reasons to people to get in touch, as well as reasons for you to get in touch with people. They provide insights so that you could follow clients, partners, and key targets for insights. Who did they just connect with? What did they just share? What did they comment on? These are all digital breadcrumbs that are of value to you. Recently, I was traveling out west. I shared a picture, a very, very poor picture of the ceiling of the airport lounge area where I was seated. But I said, I'm heading out west to present to top performing financial advisors about social selling. I was talking about who I work with and what I do and where I was going. And the comments and the likes followed. So it was a reminder to my network that I'm active in the social selling space. Here's another example. I gave a presentation, a social selling training webinar and a live presentation. And I mentioned or tagged the client in my post after sharing this image that was taken of me when I had finished my session. And my client responded saying it was a great session and thanked me. So in a sense, I got a testimonial by simply sharing an update. Now, updates don't have to be something that you have to author yourself necessarily. I just shared an article about Marissa Mayer and her 130-hour work week, and I added one word, agree, ? And the conversation started from there. So again, just a way to, similar to what was the criteria from the Social Selling Index, establishing thought leadership and sharing insights, you can share articles from other sources and spark a debate, spark conversation. It's not whether you agree or disagree, just you can put in maybe some initial thoughts, or tell people, I found this article interesting for the following reasons, or I agree about this and disagree about that. You're still stamping it with your thought leadership, but you're starting a conversation. Let's move from passive and conveying your personal brand now into, once I've got that established, how do I become more proactive in my social selling efforts? Regardless of the network, you want to do some research, you want to connect, you want to do outreach, whether it be following someone on Twitter, connecting with someone on LinkedIn, and we'll get some other examples, some other new and emerging networks that may be of value to you as well that you should make note of. Don't be afraid to reach out to strangers. What's the worst that could happen? They may say nothing, and as in like not respond at all, or they may say no thanks, or they may be gracious and share a little bit of their time. Think about the people in your network who are super connectors, the people that are members of associations that you're targeting, part of a community that you're targeting, have a natural propensity to introduce or connect. You know who those people are. Keep them top of mind, nurture those relationships, and periodically leverage them for referrals and introductions. No matter who it is, always be gracious and respectful of their time and their willingness to help you. Don't spam or sell. When you reach out to someone, reach out to help, reach out to ask for their time and insight. You'll earn the right to sell later. Save your searches to be more productive. When it comes to LinkedIn, consider a premium account to be better in your targeting, more productive in your research. And I make nothing from LinkedIn for recommending that. Basically, the more you pay, the more information you get, the more features that you have access to, and therefore the more productive you are. As well, in the case of Sales Navigator from LinkedIn, when you flag someone as a prospect, as an example, or an organization as a target account, you start getting passive notifications from LinkedIn when they're mentioned in the news, when they've shared an article. So it's a great way of remaining influential to them along their decision-making journey, because LinkedIn is keeping you apprised of their activity and their behavior. When it comes to inviting someone to connect, you've got a 300 character limit. Get creative. Always, or I should say whenever possible, customize the invite. When it comes to the LinkedIn mobile app, be careful, because sometimes the mobile app doesn't, depending on where you're accessing it, doesn't allow you to customize the invite. If you need to wait till you're back at your desk or your laptop, feel free to do that. But if we just met, for example, over coffee, and I'm walking back to the car and I send you an invitation to connect via mobile and I don't customize the invite, I mean, you'll give me a break, because we literally just said goodbye moments ago. But always err on the side of caution and customize the invite when you can. Here's an example. Stephen, it was great meeting you last week at the RMA conference. I'm glad you enjoyed my presentation. I will follow up with you via email to pick up the conversation where we left off. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. I continued to nurture the relationship after meeting Stephen at that conference, and introduction or initial meeting, follow-up conversations, proposal, client. Sharing information along the way to influence his decision and move him from someone who was considering the need for social media services, and now confirming that he needed it. When it comes to sending someone a LinkedIn message, whether you're inviting them to connect or not, think about who it is that you're sending it to. Be specific. Consider that they're time-starved. We're all busy people. Multiple distractions. Lots of things, vying for our attention. So be specific, introduce yourself as you would in real life, but get to the point. Why is it that you're messaging them? Ideally, it's not to sell them something, it's to make a connection, maybe share a little bit of insight as to, other people that you've been working with, and again, conveying the value indirectly, and all in an effort to give them reason to give you a little bit of their time and perhaps connect with you. Think about it as the what's in it for me or WIFM acronym, but the me is them in this case. Think about what's in it for them. I want you to be mindful of the difference between in-mail or messages through LinkedIn versus email. Email has a risk of not getting through spam filters. Email does not provide the context of the shared connections you might have. It doesn't give your work history, doesn't give a sense of industry sectors or past clients you may have worked with. Doesn't give a lot of additional detail to who you are, what you do, who you do it for, versus when you send a message through LinkedIn, your name is a hyperlink to your profile. It gives all that extra detail. So essentially, you're giving yourself a warm referral If that person goes and checks out your profile, sees that you share mutual connections, and draws their own conclusion that, oh, they wouldn't be connected to so-and-so if they weren't a genuine person, etc. As well, sending a message through LinkedIn avoids the issue of spam filters and gets a higher open rate than email because it doesn't get lost in their inbox in the same way. But as mentioned before, be human, be vulnerable to a degree. Ask for their time and a conversation, and don't push for a sales pitch. If you're the kind of person who sends a genuine message inviting someone to connect, and once they've accepted that connection, 2 minutes later you hit them with a sales pitch in their inbox, that's not the approach that you should be taking. Make the connection first, wait a while. You'll earn the right to sell them later. But if you are one type of message in the introduction or invitation to connect, and then you undo it all with a sales pitch moments later, that's not the right approach. Again, under the umbrella of proactive efforts in social selling, you want to be mining the data and the social signals that people are leaving through their behavior in social media. Look for those conversation triggers: birth, death, divorce, marriage, graduation, new child, job promotion, work anniversary, sharing that they're at a conference, anything that flags an opportunity to engage in conversation, to acknowledge what they've shared. Pay attention on a regular basis, and you never know where those conversations may lead. Regularly nurture your existing network. Stay in touch with people. Don't lose touch. I recognize the larger your network, the more difficult it will become, but there is a core group of people that are important to you. Keep in touch with them. See how they're doing. Pay attention to those notifications from social about work anniversary, birthdays, job changes, conference mentions that they're at a conference, or life events, whatever it is, as an opportunity to engage in conversation with them, to stay top of mind, and give them an opportunity to remain top of mind with you as well. People who have viewed your profile, pay attention to that. Don't think it's stalkerish or creepy by reaching out to people who visited your profile and asking them if you could be of any help. I know that sounds weird to some, or that feels like it would be uncomfortable for some to try, but you never know where the conversation might go. The worst they can say is nothing, or second to that, no, I don't need your help. But when someone's looked at your profile more than once over a period of time, there may be a reason that they're doing that. They may want to engage you. Someone was looking at my profile several times over a couple of weeks. I reached out to them and said, can I be of any help? And it turns out that they were a conference producer, and I was being considered as a speaker. And I was able to expedite the conversation by proactively reaching out to them and offering to help. When you're looking at someone's profile, LinkedIn will share with you a list of 10 other people of similar stature, or like job position, job title, industry. And so you may realize, oh, I'm looking at this one person as a sales prospect, and here's 10 more people that are of similar roles and responsibilities. 10 more prospects delivered to you for free. As you're looking at people more closely and starting to profile them, there's some things you want to consider. So if we take a look here at John Bellier, he's the CEO of an insurance company, Toronto-based. He shares his Twitter handle and his company website. Now, before I look further at LinkedIn, I'll see if we share any mutual connections. I've got a choice of at least 5 people that could refer me or introduce me to John, and I can evaluate who would be the right person. But I also take a look at his Twitter account. And what I want to highlight here is he changes the language by which he describes himself, as well as where and how he spends his time. His interest in innovation, his love of golf and traveling and hanging out with his family. He humanizes himself here and shares some insights that aren't typically shared in an environment like LinkedIn. I get a much more well-rounded perspective on him. As well, I find out who else follows him that follows me on Twitter. So again, I might get a referral through one of those people rather than through LinkedIn. But when I drill deeper and I look at how he spends his time on Twitter, I start to, he mentioned that he loves golf. Well, I discovered that the person that he spoke to the most on Twitter was a golf pro. So when it comes to whenever I might engage John, I'm not going to be surprised that he speaks to, that he brings up golf. Maybe I'll keep in my back pocket the prospect of inviting him to the corporate golf tournament. I may never say anything about golf. The fact remains I've learned a tremendous amount about him and his interests through his digital behavior. When I'm profiling someone and I'm looking at their LinkedIn profile, if I take advantage of the Discoverly Chrome extension, it will show me whether or not we share mutual friends on Facebook. Now, I'm not going to become friends with Max on Facebook. I leverage the mutual friends we have to get an introduction via email or through LinkedIn. It's a free Chrome extension, again, helping me map someone's social graph and leverage our mutual connections. Making those connections. Well, I mentioned earlier about the concept of a super connector. Roger is one of my super connectors. He's done 20 plus years of work in the small business space here in Canada. So his work in that space is very, very important to me. And so he's the kind of person whose network is a network that I want access to. So using premium features and filters made available through a premium account on LinkedIn, I can isolate my research to connections of Roger, a geographic location, Toronto only. Then I can do company size, industry, a variety of criteria, job title, etc., and come up with a very filtered, quality and qualified list to review with Roger by phone and do all the heavy lifting for him, and then simply say, Roger, of this list, thumbs up, thumbs down, who would take a call or an email from me at your recommendation? The more work you can do for them and the more productive you can be on their behalf and make it easier for them to refer, the more referrals you'll get. There's new features on LinkedIn's mobile app when you're at a conference for making connections. You can click Find Nearby, which is in the top middle, and then on the right you'll see how that works. It sort of acts like radar. So if others at the conference or event have put their Find Nearby on, they will appear, kind of like appearing on radar. Not everyone's comfortable with that, but again, this is about if you're comfortable, you're at a specific networking event and someone's open to connect, consider it. Again, if you're at a conference or an event and you're short on business cards, well, LinkedIn makes it easier to exchange contact information and connect on LinkedIn by scanning a QR code. I want to highlight an emerging network called Shaper. So you might be a small fish in a big pond like LinkedIn, but if you want to be a big fish in a little pond like Shaper, this is great for people in a business development role or entrepreneurs who are wanting to make valuable connections. You're not always certain on LinkedIn what someone's agenda is. Some people are on LinkedIn and they're not very active, so they don't want to be sold and they're not necessarily game to make connections. But Shaper, from its inception, the agenda there is people are on Shaper to make valuable business connections. Could be looking for investment, work mentor, career change, introductions. In my case, as an entrepreneur, I like to meet other entrepreneurs. I like to meet people that are in the industries that I'm targeting. Also, as an educator and mentor to startups, I like to make connections with startups. So there's a variety of reasons I'm on Shaper, and there's a lot of value that I've found from my own personal experience. So check it out. It's free. There is a pro version that you could consider paying for, but there's a lot of value to be derived even from the free version. This is what it looks like on your mobile device. They'll push a profile to you where, in this case, Mandy on the left works in public relations. She's listed the 5 sort of interests or areas, and then she has a chance to provide a quote about why and what she's interested in about Shaper and who she's interested in connecting with. And then if she finds others that are have similar or mutual interests, then Shaper will tell you it's a match. And then it'll move it over into notifying you of a connection, and you can take the conversation from there. So as you're trying to make those connections, whether it be through LinkedIn or Shaper, and you want to influence those relationships through content, as people are considering where and how they want to engage with you, and what, whether it's the product or service that you're offering, give some consideration to content that educates. Lead with value. Be helpful. So I wrote an article about social selling that my friend Jill Rowley shared. It resonated with John. As a result, John, not knowing me until Jill introduced him to me through my content, he became a part of my network. So my authorship led to an expansion in my network. Look for outlets to build your personal brand through content. I've written twice for a magazine in the UK. I write for the Canadian Professional Sales Association, which is also a reason I'm with you today here on this webinar. Look for those outlets to convey your thought leadership, build a personal brand, to engage with prospective clients through content and activities like webinars and magazines, etc. One of my favorite examples that I want to highlight is river pools. Great example, even if it's B2C, the principles still apply of using content to influence the decisions of customers. So in 2001, River Pools was founded. Fast forward to 2008, you have the financial crisis in the US, and here's a company selling a luxury item, typically paid for with discretionary income. And so they saw with the financial crisis, people were canceling their orders, asking for deposits to be refunded. And Marcus Sheridan from River Pools was like, what are we going to do? So in conjunction with his colleagues, they devised a strategy of starting to write blogs that addressed the most common questions they received from prospective clients, most common questions they got on sales calls. So for example, they would get questions related to the cost of a vinyl liner pool versus fiberglass, what the differences were, advantages, disadvantages, etc. As a result of that, they wrote this blog, and just so you know, this one blog, and although there was others, and they've continued to write rich content, is responsible for at least $3 million in sales. That's right, $3 million in sales of pools. So 2001 they were founded, 2008 you had the economic downturn, 2009 they started blogging, 2010 they installed 600 plus pools. And today they're the most trafficked pool site in the world. And Marcus Sheridan has an additional business called the Sales Lion, teaching corporations how to use content to address and influence the concerns of customers and prospective clients. So from his perspective, it's not about sharing, it's not about a race to the price and a race to close. It's about providing content that builds to and explains how a price is arrived at. So you never have to disclose price until the absolute most appropriate time, but you've influenced and prepared them for the disclosure of price through your educational content. Another great example is Indium Corporation. They make solder paste. The components, or I should say the material used to connect electronic components to assembly boards. And so here's a company that makes solder paste and makes content related to that, and it works for them. Their motto is content to cash. They had a 600% increase in lead generation from one quarter to the next. And their head of sales said the social media sales leads are the most qualified and the best leads that they've ever received. That's what they told the head of marketing who I interviewed. So if Indium Corporation can write content 72 keyword-driven blogs of content by a dozen plus engineers and make it worth their while, surely your organization has a story it can tell. Another avenue that people are sharing content, even B2B related content, is Instagram. Here's HubSpot, a marketing software company, and they're showing content related to work-life balance policies. And what I found, and you'll see other examples of this here and elsewhere, is that Instagram's been utilized in a number of ways by organizations to convey corporate culture, employee branding, employee advocacy, giving people a sense of what it's like inside the company. And although it may not be a direct sales pitch, people start, it raises the likability of the organization. So there's an indirect win for the company, because a prospective client, if they feel an affinity for that organization, if they feel like that's a well-run company, people are happy, as the old adage from Richard Branson says, if you keep your staff happy, they'll make your customers happy. And if that comes across through your social content and employee advocacy and employee branding efforts, then that could pay a dividend. Here's IBM using Instagram to showcase their technological aptitude and capability in relation to data for the US Open Tennis. Here's MailChimp, an email software company, leveraging National Hot Dog Day to still perpetuate their brand. So getting creative with your content, still reminding people, depending on the stage of their decision-making journey, that you exist, that you're still around delivering products and services. This is a great example of using, tying an event that's in some ways unrelated to your business and marrying the two. When it comes to not just authoring content like the examples we were showing there on Instagram, but curating third-party content that can be helpful to your prospective clients, to show them, sending them an article to, instead of following up on that proposal, just send them an article and said, saw this, thought of you, enjoy. Or, saw this, based on our last conversation, I thought this would be of interest to you. And again, it's just another touch point. You're staying in touch, you're reminding them you're still around, and sometimes it jogs them to get back to you about maybe an outstanding inquiry you'd made. Maybe you're still waiting for them to respond about that proposal, but rather than bother them about it, you just send them a piece of content that, and strike up a parallel conversation. And sometimes or oftentimes in my case, they will respond about and thank me for the article, but then also say, I know I owe you a response regarding your proposal, and they'll give me an update. It works magic. So using something like Feedly, you can discover content by industry or certain categories, but it also has a recommendation engine which says, if you like this, then you may also like XYZ. And so it's a great way to quickly build a system for finding and curating third-party content that could be of interest to your prospects and to your broader social network. Now that, within Feedly, that's constantly pulling in new and refreshed content. But if you want to bookmark content to share later, you want to bookmark content that's evergreen on particular topics, you want to bookmark content from your competitors, or you just want a central, I'll call it, repository of content that remains in place, and you can organize it with tags and so on. Pocket is something you might want to consider. Raising awareness along that funnel journey through content. So here's an example. I wrote an article on about don't wish happy birthday on LinkedIn 2.5 years ago. It's still getting likes, still getting comments and shares. It was something that resonated with people. So again, if you write the right kind of content that resonates with your audience, it can have a long life. Wrote an article about social selling for my network, and it got shared to a broader sales strategy audience. Again, right place, right time with the right kind of content. it can pay off for you as well. And raise awareness about me and my personal brand. Here's an example of putting together a content portfolio page where you can put everything in one place, or some examples or key examples of content, share the link rather than multiple links to multiple files, and you get analytics for people who have visited the profile or visited the content. Using something like Attach, not only to raise awareness through content, but as people move along the journey, you can start them off with just an overview of your company, your product, your service. You can move them to ebook, white paper, presentation as your conversations become more substantive, and ultimately you can move them to proposal. And as you share each piece of content via something like Attach, you get notification when they open it if they've shared it with someone else. These are all valuable data points to show how and where they are in their decision-making journey and at what stage they're at with your content. Automation can help manage all of this process, but I caution you, don't put it on autopilot. You want to be conscious of that I'm automating some things, but be mindful of what's out there in the media that if, in relation to my social posts, will this, come back to haunt me later. Using something like Buffer to schedule your posts to all of your social channels. However, I recommend that you don't schedule the same thing to every channel at the same time. Shuffle things up a bit, because each social network responds to different types of content. Each social network has a slightly different optimal schedule too. So keep that all in mind. And as I was saying, automation is helpful for you to manage and scale it. Autopilot runs the risk of you doing something or mistakenly posting something at the wrong time that would detract from your personal brand. So just be cautious. But here's an example, when I'm sharing content consistently, that it pays a dividend. Here's someone saying to me, without fail, I'm in the top of their news feed. So again, through automation, I'm able to establish and maintain being top of mind. Some other tools that you may want to consider for not only the curation of content, but as well staying on top of what's happening with your prospects. Owler is great for intel about a target company, their competition, and so on. And we'll get into a company nudge and a few others in a moment. Google Alerts. Very, very simple. You can set it up and just have email notifications sent to you when a prospect or a company is mentioned, and so in the news, so you can be kept apprised of what's happening with them. Here's a company on the left. It's a plugin when you're logged into Gmail. If you're, and I believe it works with Outlook as well. If you received an email from someone, this is the profile that it will build, and then here's an example from Nudge, and it builds a different profile, and a company will also send you notification of people in the news or mentions or activity, and then this is full contact as well. These are all Chrome extensions and compatible with Gmail to build rich profiles about prospects and have you stay apprised of what they're up to. So here's an example of an email from a company when people that I've flagged as prospects or people in my network are in the news. We haven't talked much about Twitter to this point, but I want to highlight a couple things about Twitter as it comes to influence through content and just staying apprised of what's happening with your prospective clients. Search.twitter.com is one of the most overlooked resources. You're able to search back to the beginning of Twitter, 10 plus years ago. And you can use the advanced search to look at, conversations between two accounts. You can look for mentions of your prospect by name, mentions of the company you're targeting. You can see if they're in the news. Are they in the news for the wrong reasons? Is there a reputational issue happening in social? All of these things can be surfaced through research on search.twitter.com. You can research their competitors. You can set up, hashtags related to conferences that are maybe your prospects are attending or you are, or you can look at hashtags for conferences in the past that are coming up again this year. Again, so much value made available to you for free. Leverage Twitter lists. You can have private lists of prospects so that you can see what they're doing on social and monitor them without them knowing. So to wrap things up, I want you to set goals and track your progress. Where do you want to go and who can help you get there? Who are those super connectors? Who are those sources of referrals? Remember that it's social media. It's about sharing, not shilling. You want to be sharing content, sharing value, leading with educational content, helpful content to influence people along their decision-making journey and be able to monitor their behavior throughout that journey to know when the right time is to engage them with either content or engaging them regarding their decision. Thank you.